would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Continuing my struggle at romancing the stone. For those of you who listened to yesterday's show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who didn't, probably not worth the effort to go back and find out. But welcome to it anyway. If you are new to the show, you've picked a great time to come on board. We are going to be doing a $50 Amazon gift card drawing on Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. Pacific time. To submit yourself to participate in this drawing, all you have to do is go to therebelbroker.com, click on the big red button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. Use the same email address both times you're asked. Answer a handful of demographic questions, and you're set. You're potentially going to win yourself $50 to spend on Amazon, and you're also helping to support the show. So it's a win-win for everybody. We've already handed out $250. Congratulations to the lucky winners who've already managed to pocket 50 Amazon bucks. And good luck to those of you who, between now and Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, add your name to the list of folks who are going to be in the drawing for that next $50 Amazon gift card. And if you would like to get in on sort of the inside track, get into the Rebel Underground, you can text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's the word Rebel Broker, all one word, to the number 44222 using your cell phone. There'll be a quick little message back so you know that you are connecting to the right thing, and then give it your contact info, and you're in. You are now going to receive exclusive content just for members of the Rebel Underground. We've already got a pretty cool video on once you've picked a larger area. Remember yesterday we were talking about areas or statistics information in terms of state rankings of migration that might help inspire in you different places you might want to shop for an investment opportunity. And we basically went from that more general idea of how do you then, after you've picked a city, a larger area, focus in on the areas to specifically consider for investment. And that's a video that's out there just for folks who are members of the Rebel Underground, and there'll be more content coming for those folks. So feel free to text the word Rebel Broker to 44222 to get in on that yourself. Now today, it's looking to shape up as another one of those shows where several different news items give an interesting connection, interesting path to follow, particularly when you consider the context of other things that we've talked about on the show in the past. And it looks like we may be at a point where we're seeing a switch in terms of what the biggest groups who make up the buying public for homes right now are thinking. Now, if you've been around for a while, you know that we've talked about all the different opinions that have been offered on what millennials are going to do. There was a period of time there where millennials were just spending time in mom and dad's basement or in mom and dad's house saving up. There was the time when we thought that millennials were going to skip that entry-level home and go just for that home they think will do the family thing. So they weren't going to be buying those 2-bedroom homes. They were really going to be looking at 3- and 4-bedroom homes. They want to buy a home and stay in it longer. I actually think that particular observation continues to hold some water, at least perhaps not in number of bedrooms, but at least in the idea that they want to keep it longer, that we would see over a longer period of time a extension of how long buyers tend to stay in the homes that they buy. We also had that time frame where everyone thought that millennials were all about the micro house. Some of you might remember that one. That blip seems to have lost its steam. We never bought that here on this show, simply because my own practical experience on the ground and other things I was reading indicated that no, I'm sorry, the millennials and the folks coming after them are not excited about tiny homes. The same number of folks who've been excited about tiny homes 20 years ago seem to be the same number of folks today that are excited about them. I don't see it as this gigantic growing trend. It is not something an industry needs to turn on. If an industry wants to turn on something, how about the building industry simply building more houses? The idea that millennials were rejecting suburban living, and we on this show poo-pooed that idea. And now we're finding, surprise, millennials are very interested in suburban homes. So a lot of different variation in millennials. And the reason why there's so much attention spent on millennials is because the idea is they are going to make up the lion's share of folks who are buying. That's the segment everyone's supposed to be courting. So whether you're someone who's renting a home and you're looking for someone to rent to, or if you are a flipper, those are the sensibilities that you're supposed to be catering to, right? That's supposed to be the demographic. And then we've talked about how to appeal to others and other demographics to try to have a little cross appeal between millennials and boomers and bring in features that will actually satisfy everybody so that we're potentially offering up a piece of property that will appeal to the largest number of buyers. So we've talked about all that stuff. And now there's some new data out that I think is kind of interesting. And by the time we're done, I think you'll see some interesting connections between all of these. And we've got this news coming from a variety of different sources. Now, our very first news item comes from, I think this one comes from Gallup, but being reported by Zero Hedge. And the headline is U.S. consumer spending highest since 2008 as economic confidence is reaching record levels. Now, this is an interesting thing to note, to see tons of confidence. Remember, also link that with previous shows where we've talked about how real income in some areas has actually gone up, but the amount of spending that folks were doing actually exceeded the increase in some of those incomes. So that itself is an expression of confidence, right? I'm out there spending more than I am seeing an increase in what I'm earning. So that's a thing. And one reason why I like to focus on this is debt is the thing. If you want to focus on things and how those things are managed and how people deal with them in their lives, debt is what we need to keep track of. Debt ultimately is what hit us over the head last time. So if we're trying to figure out how to forge a path forward in our economy, understanding debt and what people do when they find themselves saddled with too much of it is a big deal. Because if you break things down to simpler statements, what happened last time was too much debt. That time it was they simply realized that they owed more on their home than it was worth. That's a perception of debt, right? So as we move forward, that's an interesting thing to keep track of. So Americans' daily self-reports of spending climbed to an average of $101 in February. This Gallup reports was the highest average for the month of February since 2008, when spending averaged $106. The latest monthly average is up $13 from January's figure, but still lower than December's holiday-influenced $105. So I actually like the way they're reporting this. They're comparing it month to month, year for each month of February, moving in through a few different years here. And I think that actually makes sense. It gives you the sort of calendar-based context of what we're seeing. Gallup notes that this is the seventh daily spending average of $100 or more that Gallup has recorded for any month over 9 years of tracking American spending reports, and the only one in February since 2008. During that year, but before the global financial crisis in the fall, Americans' monthly average spending exceeded $100 4 times. So we're spending like we were before the downturn. Interesting. What's even more surprising in this poll is that previous reports that due to a delay in the payment of tax refunds by the U.S. Treasury, spending would be muted in the past month. The latest delay not only refutes this assumption, but suggests that the outcome was just the opposite of what many had expected. So while folks were expecting caution on the part of consumers for spending, that's not what they got. They ended up with more spending. Let me see here. I don't think there was anything else ridiculously sexy. Let's see. The index has recovered the ground it lost over the week of January 3rd through February 5th when it fell from the previous record high of plus 14 to plus 8. So that was kind of the main takeaway for me in terms of this. Higher levels of confidence matched to higher levels of spending on the part of consumers. And that is the stuff that fits together, right? We've talked before about certain statistics that don't make sense or certain reports or numbers that contradict each other. One good example is when builder confidence goes up, but the builders aren't taking actions that indicate they're confident, right? Builders can say we're super confident about the future, but if they're not hiring architects to design more homes, if they're not acquiring land or starting the permit process or doing any of those things that would tell you that a buyer is confident, I think that's worth pointing out and noting that while they're talking a good game about how confident they are about housing, they sure aren't investing any of their money or effort into actually taking a confident action as it relates to housing. Now, we're not seeing that in this one, but that's just to kind of illustrate my point. These are two things that fit together. We're seeing confidence going up and we're seeing spending going up, where in the past, it's often been contradictory and there was room for us to see, this may not be what we think it is. There may be more going on here that's influencing this number to go up, despite the fact it's in contradiction to this other number. But in this case, they sort of validate each other. Another article from Housing Wire: consumers have never felt better about housing than they do right now. So I'm not going to say dovetail. Let's go ahead and compare this with a general consumer confidence, which we've already seen and has been reflected in spending. But Fannie Mae did a survey that shows that consumer confidence in housing specifically has reached an all-time high. It's the Home Purchase Sentiment Index, and this is one we cover. Because that's another one that is often in contradiction with other numbers we see, but can also be a good indicator of what we might see in terms of markets down the road. It reached an all-time high in February, and it continued to climb in confidence that actually started in January. Quote, January's version of the Home Price Sentiment Index showed that consumers' confidence in housing improved for the first time in 5 months, and February's survey saw consumers' sentiments improve even more. According to the Fannie Mae report, the Home Purchase Sentiment Index increased by 5.6 percentage points in February to 88.3, setting an all-new record. It's also up 5.6 percentage points from the same period last year. So on a year-to-year basis, on a month-to-month basis, folks are far more confident about the market than they were before. The net share of Americans who said that now is a good time to buy a home rose by 11 percentage points, all very consistent with what we've seen so far. And the net share of consumers who believe that now is a good time to sell also rose by 7 percentage points. Consumers also, remember, we've seen these actually at odds with one another. About 8 months ago, it was lower numbers of buyers who were confident now is a good time to buy, but a slightly increasing number of sellers. And we've seen it go the other way as well. So this is an interesting time when it seems like universally consumers are thinking the market's robust right now. It's a little bit odd to see prices up in so many areas in my marketplace where buyers are now getting more enthusiastic despite the fact we're continuing to see prices going up. My feeling is that buyers are thinking prices are going to continue to go up and they need to get in on something now before things get out of hand. And remember, we've talked about this phenomenon before. It's the buying frenzy phenomenon where people start feeling like if we don't do something, things are going to get so much worse that we're not going to be able to act. Now, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break right now, but we come back, we'll cover the rest of this story from Housing Wire and plus a few more that I think really round out this discussion in a very interesting way. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com. soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. Looking at some interesting numbers about consumer confidence, spending habits, all these things that are indicating folks are continuing to believe things are going to go well, and also apparently embracing the idea that debt is okay, and that they should be willing to spend more than they're making. We also just covered that the good time to buy versus good time to sell numbers are up. The survey also showed that the share of folks reporting that their household income is significantly higher than it was 12 months ago increased by 4 percentage points, which is good. Let's see. Consumers who felt that they were confident that they were not going to lose their jobs, that increased by 9%. Also, and this is a big one, and I think this also what's interesting to feed the idea that buyers think now is the time to buy. Most Americans, more Americans, not most, according to this, expect home prices to go up, with the net share rising 3 percentage points. So not a gigantic rise there. The net share of consumers who think mortgage rates will go down over the next 12 months held steady for the third consecutive month. So that kind of makes sense, right? You see that number staying flat. You see folks observing a market where they think things are going to continue to go up. They're not confident on what's going to happen with mortgage rates. So in general, it sounds like folks are thinking this is a good time to jump in. We're going to talk a little bit about the nature of their jumping in a second to try to decide if this is a good scenario or a bad one, but we'll hold off on that for just a minute here. Now, Doug Duncan, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at Fannie Mae, said, quote, "The latest post-election surge in optimism puts the HPSI at its highest level since its starting point in 2011. Millennials showed especially strong increases in job confidence and income gains, a necessary precursor for increased housing demand from first-time homebuyers." And absolutely something we've talked about here for years, how if you want to fix housing, aside from getting the supply and demand stuff balanced out, you need to have folks with jobs who can afford to buy. You don't solve housing by tinkering with the houses. You typically solve housing by letting the industry hire more people or getting out of the way of allowing industry to hire more folks. Preliminary research results from our team find that millennials are accelerating the rate at which they move out of their parents' homes and form new households. Continuing this from Doug Duncan. However, continued slow supply growth implies continued strong price appreciation and affordability constraints facing millennials and first-time buyers in many markets. So that's an interesting stage to be set. We're continuing to see low inventories, which is going to not artificially, it's a response to the low inventory, which is going to see prices jump as we see more buyers competing for these homes, right? Confidence is up. Willingness to spend is up. Confidence things are going to go well in the future is up. Confidence that prices are going to go up. All of those things feed into a marketplace where you see more buyers jumping out there to buy. Okay, so let's move on to the next bullet point. I wanted to point this one out just because I think it's interesting to note. House prices up 6.9% year over year in January. Home prices nationwide, including distressed sales, increased year over year by 6.9% in January 2017 compared with January 2016. That's a pretty big increase as a national average. Clearly, you'll see some areas of the country where that's a great deal more and some where it's quite a bit less. And I happen to live in an area where it's been more than that. So here we are in an area where prices are already fairly rapidly going up. In some areas I serve, double digits, where prices have gone up more than 10%. And this should all feel very familiar. This kind of ramp up in prices is where we were before the downturn. So try to put on your Wayback Machine and take a peek back and try to feel the same things that you were feeling back in 2007, back in 2006. What was going on in the marketplaces? What were you seeing? Now, back then, we were seeing sort of an artificial fussing with the market in terms of subprime borrowers. You were creating more and more folks who could buy. The difference was that builders were also building tons and tons of homes, but not nearly enough to meet the demand. So what have we got now? We've got less building going on, but still, again, this idea that by creating more and more buyers, somehow that fixes the problem, when the problem is not the number of buyers. The problem is the number of homes being added to the inventory, the number of housing units. So let's move on to the next one, because this is where things start to get a little bit scary, because now we've already talked about how a lot of the circumstances are starting to feel more familiar. And again, remember, this is a trend we've been talking about for a while. I've been pointing out correlations to past bad stuff for quite a while. This is more to that, which I think just really tends to feed what should be a reasonable concern. Now, this comes to us from Risk Media. Millennials leverage FHA loans in January. Definitely a interesting topic, because we've already established millennials are ready to buy. Millennials are ready to come out and make some things happen. When you look at the confidence, when you look at the other projections, when you look at the stats describing what's going on with millennials, it indicates that they are now willing to take a step out and purchase their own properties. What's interesting is this thing called the LMA Millennial Tracker. Okay, so that's what all they're doing with this is tracking millennials. And they're staking a majority claim in housing. Millennials are comprising 84% of closed loans, 35% of which were FHA loans. We can translate what that means. Let me just I can give you the quote here, because this encapsulates what's wrong in a lot of ways in terms of the creation of more buyers. And I don't think we can have an argument about what the solution is. The solution is not create more buyers, not enable subprime lending, because what we're about to do in describing what's going on with FHA is define subprime lending. I'm not going to use my words. I'm going to use the words of the Executive Vice President of Corporate Strategy for Ellie Mae, Joe Tyrell. So let's see what Joe has to say. As the purchase market heats up, we will continue to watch the FHA purchase trend amongst millennials. It is not surprising to see millennial borrowers leverage FHA loans, because they typically offer lower down payments and lower average FICO score requirements. Let me say that one more time. Because they typically offer lower down payments and lower average FICO score requirements. So let's explore that reality for a second. So clearly, the lower average FICO score is subprime. You're not going with a conventional loan. You're going with this other loan from FHA. You're mixing. So, and that's the definition of a subprime loan, right? But let's take that a step further. You are a higher risk person when it comes to borrowing money, but you are also expected to put less into the purchase of the property. So we are blending someone with a lower credit score or who is a less qualified borrower who may have credit problems or a credit history that indicates they may not do well at paying their bills, or maybe not even making enough money where if any stresses happen in their financial world, they'd be able to continue to make the payments. We have those folks coming in and only putting down 3.5% as a down payment. And let's also understand that in many areas, in most areas, I can't think of an area where this isn't true, where the second escrow closes on your home, if you buy it with an FHA loan, you are underwater. Now, of course, how long that's true is going to depend on where your home is and how fast homes are appreciating in value. But the truth is, if you had to try to turn around and sell that home within a month of buying it, you would have to write a check to the bank at the end of the escrow, because the taxes and fees relating to selling a home would be more than you could make. That's just a reality. So we are immediately putting folks into a situation where they owe more on the house than it's worth in real dollars in terms of what they could walk away with at the end of a closed escrow. Now, of course, that's not the way most folks look at it. Most folks look at it as, here's what my mortgage is, here's my payment. They might grow up on Zillow or Trulia and find out what their home is worth or try to get an idea of what their home's worth. And they may see I owe $500,000 on this house and they say that it's currently worth $505,000. Great, then I'm okay. Well, you're not really okay, right? You couldn't sell that home for $505,000 even if Zillow was correct and then keep the rest. That's not the way it works. There's fees, there's taxes, there's all kinds of things you're going to have to pay. And when everything is said and done, you'd probably have to come up with thousands of dollars to finish the process. But given enough time, you would be all right. So what is the scary part of that? Well, what if that doesn't continue? What if our theory, because remember, this is what got us last time. It was this real estate values always go up attitude. There's no problem. We can afford to extend loans with these really low down payments and all this stuff because it's always going up. This is something that we don't have to worry about. We are now engaging the exact same acts when that was the common wisdom of 2007 and 2000. Well, heck, 1999, all the way up to 2007, 2008. That was the common wisdom. And the product of that was a ridiculous economic downturn that took out an awful lot of folks, threw a lot of folks into foreclosure. We saw all kinds of horrible things happening. And all this is doing is resetting that stage. Some of the vocabulary has changed. Some of the references have changed. But the reality is that just quoting this gentleman from Ellie Mae, they are clearly doing the exact same stuff they did before. He goes on to say, as more millennials enter the market, we expect to see the popularity of FHA loans continue to rise. And I'll bet he is right. Blend this statement with what we've talked about in the last few minutes relating to consumer confidence, relating to whether or not the larger number of folks believe this is the time to buy. It's pretty darn scary. Another interesting thing to note is I've talked before about priming the pump with a lot of loans like this. We've been doing it for a while. This 3.5% deal has been around for a while. And for some folks, they've already enjoyed enough appreciation that they're now positive. If they had to sell the home, they'd be fine. But if we do see a huge jump in 2017, what an interesting stage continues to get set, because in a previous show back in November, December, when we were talking about when will manufacturers catch up with demand, what was the year that got thrown out? Well, 2020. So what we're saying is this expectation that we'll have continuing transactions like this, where prices continue to go up, and then by 2020, things suddenly get balanced out. We sure better hope that we see in a lot of these areas increases that overwhelm this indebtedness that folks are purchasing right out of the chute. Because if we start to see a point where that growth is no longer needed, where the inventory problem is no longer there, what happens to real estate prices? Now, the argument's always been, and one reason why home builders are hesitant, and I get it, is the perception is that too much overbuilding went on leading up to the downturn. Check any chart. I've shared them before on my Pinterest page. You can find them there. You can see a huge amount of construction going on just before the downturn. As soon as the downturn came, everything just dropped like a rock. And we haven't ever really gotten anywhere near that number since, despite the need for more housing units. And the default has always been build more apartments, at least in my area. That seems to be what's getting built. And when folks are out there building a lot of housing units, what's happening is apartments, not single family residential, not condo, not townhome. And I still continue to get the updated list. I'm on the email list for all the home manufacturers that work all through California. And I get their email saying, here's a new community that's come online. None of these are average price communities. If you look at the prices they're charging, these are all average price. Take the average price in that community, add 10 to 20%. sometimes way more than that, and that's what those homes are selling for. So we're just not seeing any sort of building going on that's really aimed at folks that are even shopping at that midpoint in what market prices are. Let's see. Overall, the average millennial FICO score was 724, which is great. The average FICO score for conventional loans was 748. The average FICO score for VA loans was 734. And the average FICO score for FHA loans, 690. Now, remember what we also talked about relating to FICO scores, and you can check this out. I've done 2 different shows on this. How that is calculated has been manipulated. Before, folks simply decided it was okay to loan to lower FICO score folks. It was just agreed upon. People said, no problem. You got a 650, we'll loan to you. You got a 640, we'll loan to you. You want to do stated income only, we'll loan to you. The way they've repopulated or reinvigorated that segment of low FICO score people is to simply screw with the equation from the other side. So instead of saying, well, you know what, we're just going to say it's okay to lend to folks at the lower FICO score. What they've done is input into the process of evaluating your FICO score elements that have no business being in your FICO score, that are not measurements really of your ability to take on debt and service it regularly. They decided things like your phone bill, your water bill, your electric bill, all of these things should be considered as positive things in your credit score. And they've done that. That was all implemented last year. Again, did 2 shows on it. Go check them out. You can find them at therebelbroker.com. I think if you do a search on credit score, they'll come right up. So feel free to find them there. But that should be a concern because we've basically done, again, the exact same thing we did before, but instead of simply saying we'll accept a lower number, we jury-rigged the system so that your number gets artificially increased. Next on the hit parade, millennials drive housing confidence higher despite red-hot prices. This is from MSNBC. And of course, links to all the articles that we discussed today will be available in the show notes for today's show. So feel free to go and check those out. A monthly sentiment index from Fannie Mae, which we just talked about, rose to the highest level since 2011. Let's see here. I thought there was something particular. They had a different take on it that I thought was interesting. Let's see. Millennial buyers at 85% were the most likely generation to view their home purchase as a good financial investment. Interesting, right? That's very different from millennials of a year ago. This is from Lawrence Yun, my favorite chief economist at the Association of Realtors. Quote, these strong feelings bode well for even greater demand in the future as more millennials settle down and begin raising families. According to this, those numbers would likely be far stronger if home values were not being forced higher by tight supplies of homes for sale, especially starter homes. Nationally, home values rose 6.9 in January over year, according to CoreLogic. That is far faster than income growth, but slightly lower than the annual price appreciation in December. Perhaps a sign that the jump in mortgage rates and the presidential election is cutting into prices even slightly. Quote, home prices continue to climb across the nation, and the spring home buying season is shaping up to be one of the strongest in recent memory, according to Frank Martell, who's the CEO of CoreLogic. He goes on to say that a potent mix of progressive economic recovery, demographics, tight housing stocks, and continued low mortgage rates are expected to support this robust market outlook for the foreseeable future. So there we go. You know, we've sort of set the stage here. A lot of this depends. I'm not a huge fan of Lawrence Yun, and normally when he makes a statement, my first instinct is to check it out to see if the exact opposite isn't true. Simply because, remember, we're talking about a guy who, and maybe it's not fair. Maybe I'm not being 100% fair. But we have to always remember where someone's bread is buttered, right? So a better market works better for the Association of Realtors. So you're going to get spin on things that reflect that kind of stuff, because that's how the Association of Realtors makes money. They make money from dues from real estate agents. So if the news is saying how great real estate is, that attracts more people into becoming licensed and paying their dues. However, it's not just him, right? He's coming to some conclusions I may initially want to question, but everything we've read so far also pushes us that way. So it's going to be interesting to see where this stuff goes. Now, let's real quickly do a check on what interest rates are doing, simply because that's obviously another thing that folks are seeing as drivers. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage is currently 4.25. That's up 0.01. It was 4.24 yesterday. 15-year fixed rate mortgage is currently at 3.45, up 0.01. I already talked about that one. FHA 30-year fixed is 3.85, with that's no change. Jumbo 30-year fixed 4.39. It was at 4.38, 0.01 increase. 5/1 adjustable rate mortgage 3.09, up 0.01. So all of them up 0.01 except for the FHA 30-year fixed. And you know what's really funny is people talk about these interest rates. I'd love for you to go to Mortgage News Daily and check out this chart. It's the average rates versus mortgage applications chart. But if you look at the fixed rate mortgage, 30-year fixed, and you look at the rates, this is not the highest rates we've seen over the last few years. The highest rates we saw were 4.49 in August of 2013. And if you'll remember, August in 2013 was still seeing plenty of sales. So these complaints that folks make have always kind of confused me. I don't quite get it. The 15-year fix still isn't hit its peak over the last couple of years. And let's see. Yeah. So anybody who's trying to sell you on this idea that the market is slowing or speeding up or doing anything based on what interest rates are doing right now is not right. So don't let them tell you that. All right, folks. Once again, it is my eternal hope that you have extracted more value from today's show than the time that you spent listening to it. Thanks for taking time. I truly appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.